There we go. So I want to welcome you guys to, this is the first of a series of quarterly training sessions we're going to do together. So all of you know, back in another day and time when we wanted to, help group leaders grow in their own character and skills, then we would have to convene a meeting in a central place. But these days, through the magic of 21st century technology, quite honestly, I don't know how Jesus pulled off what he did without a computer and internet. But he must have had something supernatural going on with him. But I'm really grateful that we've got this terrific reach and technology where we can actually be in our own places and we really don't have to be at the same place. And once you get used to this platform, I use this platform every single week. I do a lot of coaching of other leaders around the country, and everyone feels like they're actually in the same room together. So I hope you're going to get that feel even tonight. What we're going to do is each quarter, we're going to offer a training session just like this, where we're going to focus around the 5 competencies that we've identified of what makes a really great group leader. And these are like 5 practices that we keep trying to grow in ourselves as the leadership team here, but also we're wanting to help you grow in those particular things. And then each time we gather like this online, I'm going to record these sessions so that, and then afterwards on usually the next day, Cindy Lucas will send out a video link so you can go back and watch it again. Or for many of you that aren't watching right now, but you're going to be watching this video link later, we're just thrilled that you're here and that you're a part of this. And then what we'll do over time is these video recordings, we'll kind of put them in what we call an on-demand library, where you would be able to access them 24 hours a day, whenever you might need them. So for those of you that are just joining us in the last few minutes, let me remind you, if you're not used to using the Zoom platform, to go take your mouse and hover over the bottom left-hand part of your screen where it says mute, and make sure you hit the mute button, or else we're going to pick up your background noise. And that will really, really, really help us. Let's see how we're all doing with that. Edwin, Rob, if you can do that, there you go. There's Jeff's iPhone. All right. We're looking good. We're honored to have in the house tonight Jimmy and Linda Knott. Woo! Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. So what I want to encourage you to do is to take notes tonight. I sent you kind of a little study sheet or cheat sheet for some of the primary things we were going to cover together tonight. And let me encourage you to take notes on that, or else if you don't have it in front of you, then you can just pull out a sheet of paper, or maybe you want to record your information on some digital device. So here's the real goal that we have for every single leader here at First Orlando. It's simply this: we want to provide everyone in the group that you lead, we want to provide everyone in the groups that each one of us lead the opportunity to grow in 3 things: to grow in an intentional faith, for everyone in the group to grow in authentic community, and for everyone to grow in missional practices. So when we talk about, we want each one of our groups to help people grow in an intentional faith, we want to help them grow in their upward dimension of the relationship with Heavenly Dad. And then our group life wants to help people grow in with a group of other people that are like themselves, that kind of represent their spiritual family, which is what our groups are all about. Wouldn't you agree? That's where we want to help people experience authentic community. And then we want to also have a 3rd dimension, an outward dimension we call missional practices, where you and I, together in community with our life group, are reaching into the brokenness of the world and seeking to serve it in some particular way. So that is really what our desire is for every one of our groups here at First Orlando. By the way, some of you already, your brain kicked in, you're doing the right thing. You can take a picture of these with your phone or with your iPad, and you will have those. Any of those I haven't already sent to you. So before we go on, I think I'd like to hear several stories from several of you. What's been a good breakthrough or something that's been encouraging to you that's happened in your group sometime in the last few weeks, okay? Something that happened either with your group at large or with an individual in your group, or maybe with you as a result of your life group. Just reach down and unmute your microphone button, and let me hear from several of you.
Hey, David, how are you?
Hi, good to see you, Ron.
I guess ours you're familiar with. We had a child of one of our group members who fell and was injured and wound up going to the hospital. Well, over the last, I guess, 3 weeks, she was in and out of the hospital, and she's fine now. Hallelujah, everything's fine with her. But that really seemed to bring our group together very quickly. That's not the way you want to try and gel a group. But they certainly gelled together, and I think virtually everyone went down and visited her while she was in the hospital, took meals with the family, and it just drew everybody closer together. We're all in our own little group text chat, so people are chatting all day long. It's amazing. That one event brought us together with what probably would have taken a year to get that close.
Yeah, that's terrific, Ron. Ron and Ken, Ron, your group is only about 3 months old?
Not even that. We started it on in January, but we got no traction because of all the things. We tried to do it back in October, and we had FPU, and so we moved it to Saturday nights, and Saturday nights seemed to be the night, and so we've only had, I think, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah. That's terrific. Okay, reach down and mute your mic now. So Ron and Kim are amazing examples of what we want to see happen here at First Orlando. And we have some experiences like this, but we'd like to see them multiplied many times over. So this family gets in trouble because of this unfortunate accident that happened with one of their kids. And the pastors, the people that know them most, which is Ron and Kim, their group leaders, they begin pastoring and caring for them. They didn't have a need, even though myself and Pastor David and Danny were aware of this situation. I assured everyone here that they were already in the best of hands with Ron and Kim's care and pastoring them. And I think it's also a great example of what we've been talking about in recent months around what does it mean to know and be known, to serve and be served. That's exactly what these guys were doing in surrounding this family, praying for them, encouraging them, providing for them, doing lots of stuff like that. And I just think that was a big win for the kingdom. And Ron and Kim, really proud of you guys in that. Really good. Good. A couple of others of you.
Hey, Dave. This is Josh out in Lake Nona. How are you?
Woo! You're in the sweet spot right there with the lake behind you. I have pictures of the water behind me, but I don't have the real thing like you.
We're grabbing dinner with the family right now, so it's it's enjoyable. We had a lady visit us single. She's part of a couple, but she chose to come on her own. Her husband's Catholic, and this happened this last week, and it'd been about a month in the making. We were connected with her. Cindy connected us with her. She said that she wanted to attend, and then just things kept coming up, and we kept pushing it back. And she came in, and we were at the start of James, is the series that we were at, and she just said that hit her. Like everything that we said was right for her. So she broke down, and it just felt like someone coming in out of the cold. So it was a special moment for the group, and it was a real neat experience.
Josh, that's awesome. Way to go. Way to go. Yay, God, for that.
Yep.
Yeah, good. One or two others.
I'll share. Maybe
All right.
not quite as spiritual. This is George Bruno. We are in the Conway area. So we're all around the Conway area.
All right.
Had one of our men retire. So we celebrated that. We had a Tex-Mex potluck dinner. We invited his daughter and grandson and mother-in-law and just had a really good evening. Good time of celebrating.
Yeah, that's great. Again, what a marvelous example of you're doing this, celebrating and being celebrated as just, that's the very best, you know. It's surprisingly, it'd be surprising for some that some of the most significant breakthroughs can happen in a person's soul and a heart when someone is either serving them or celebrating them, that sometimes just even prayer and Bible study can't get to. And those are very important things. But I'm saying what we see in Scripture is the power of the one another commands. And the biggest emphasis seems to be on what we're supposed to be doing with one another, in comforting one another, encouraging one another. And I've just kind of collapsed all those things down into the 4 phrases that we use these days. But wow, what a great example of that. Thank you very much. Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, David, we're really getting a lot of experience in our life group with comforting those who are suffering from illness, to the point where people are beginning to say, maybe I shouldn't be in the class anymore. I think I'm going to get sick.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
That's, just obviously that's not the case, but it's really it has brought the class together and continues to hold the class together with people with and we have people as young as in their 50s and as old as in their 80s. So we have a wide range, and but that's one thing we have in common. We're human beings, and illness strikes, but the class, it seems to have really brought it together more. I mean, we've been doing this for over 20 years.
Yeah.
But the class really seems to be closer now than I've ever seen it, and it's because of adversity and gathering around each other during times of adversity.
Yeah, exactly. Bob, that's a great, great story. Thanks for sharing that with us. Anyone else?
I have a story to share.
Oh, great. Hello, Rachel.
Hey. We have a girl who joined our life group about a year ago. She was dating one of the guys in our group, and she really had no interest in God, but she kind of tagged along and has really plugged into our group, found great community, has started walking with the Lord, and she and the guy she was dating just got engaged, and we're going to throw a bridal shower for her, and we're just really excited to see all that God is doing in her life.
Oh, yay, God. Woo! That's good. We celebrate with you.
Thank you.
You and Matthew, Crone and I had the privilege of being in your group before, and you guys, along with everyone else that's on this call, you are such terrific examples of the kind of leaders and pastors that First Orlando just yearns to have, so that we can help pastor thousands of people. And you guys have just broken it down in your living room. How many couples do you guys have in your church? Have in your group? Remind me.
We have like a dozen. When we started, we had 2 kids. They were our own. And 3 years later, there's 15 kids. People just keep having babies. So we're definitely growing.
Well, then I'm not going to ask you what in the world your curriculum has been, because I want to
don't know what's in the water, but something.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Rachel. Great report. Really good report. Well, let me take just a moment and share with all of you and put up on the screen just what we consider to be the 5 primary practices that we want to see happen with each of us as group leaders. Myself and Daryl and Jimmy and Doug and several others kind of sat around for a couple of months and really came up with these are the 5 things that we want to help as we continue growing these things ourselves. We want to help you grow further in these things. And the first one is this. It would be the obvious one, but it's still, we know, is at the top of the list. Primary practice of a great group leader is someone that prioritizes their spiritual growth. Prioritizes their spiritual growth. This morning before I left the house, and came here to work, I did what I often do. I dropped to one knee, and I just put myself in a position of surrender again, just extended my hands out, and I was reminding myself in the presence of the Lord that, David, you are first and foremost a follower, long before you are a leader. So this day, David, continue to be a follower of him as you're seeking to be a leader for him. So, I would encourage you, and there are a lot of things I do, as each one of you do as well. But again, to prioritize your spiritual growth. We'll talk more about that another day. The second thing is what it means to start a group really well and then to end it really well. So yesterday, you've probably heard us talk about, we had this Southwest group launch party. And we just announced it over the course of one weekend, 2 weeks ago. Well, yesterday we had it at the 10 o'clock hour. We had 54 people show up. And we started 5 groups from all of that. And so, but the way we did it, we were trying to show these new people that are going to begin to facilitate these groups what it means to start their group well. Over time, we'll show them how to end their group well. Because we all know that the best of groups have a shelf life to them. Some last a long time, some last over a short period of time. It's really dependent upon the season of life that people are in. Again, we'll talk more about that another day. A third practice is to facilitate engaging group meetings. This is a really important practice if you and I are going to be really effective, God-honoring, great group leaders. Number 4, to be able to guide the direction of the group through the up, in, and out emphasis that we talked about a while ago. Again, more about that another day. And then the last thing, number 5, to continuously improve the relational and spiritual growth of your group through partnering with a group's ministry coach. And all we mean by that is that, myself and Daryl and Doug and Jimmy and Aaron and Simon and so many others, we want to help provide for you what we want you providing for all the people in your group. And our desire is to be able to create a whole series of ministry coaches and a coaching system this year where every group leader at First Orlando will have a coach for him or her. And these ministry coaches will be kind of giving support and care to, 3 or 4 people, within their lives. So any questions you want to ask about any of that? Okay, what we're going to do is in our remaining time together today is I want to zero in just on one of those 5, okay? And it was actually the second practice. One of the primary practices of a great group leader is to be able to facilitate great group meetings, to be able to facilitate engaging group meetings. Engaging means that everybody participates. Engaging means that everybody, feels a part of it. There's not just one talking head or a couple of talking heads coming at them, but where they feel like they are known, they are being loved, they are being celebrated, not just 1 or 2 others in the room. So what you notice there in your note sheets that I sent you is that great leaders don't just primarily teach, they primarily learn how to facilitate discussion and interaction and relationship within the group. Again, it's just astounding. There are all these one another commands throughout the New Testament, and it's like it all comes down to relationship, right? Relationship with God and relationship with one another. And so great group leaders know how to really facilitate engaging group meetings where all of a sudden it should dawn on you at some point that it's really not about transmitting as much information, knowledge, and truth as possible, as important as that is. And we know truth and biblical content is just paramount, very important to us. But at the same time, we want to be inviting people not just to hear God's word, but to invite them into conversation that helps them process and figure out how can they move from being hearers of the word into doers of the word. Because that's really where we believe that life transformation is really going to happen. So there are a couple of real simple ways, a couple of real simple practices for great facilitators. The first one is this, shouldn't be a surprise to you. Encourage everyone to participate. Encourage everyone to participate. To me, if you're in more of an ideal type life group, and let me just pause and come up for air for a moment. Some of you have been in life groups for many years where the primary emphasis has been, teaching the word. Again, that is awesome. Great job with that. But over time, if that's been the predominant thing, where like 95% of the time it's been about teaching, and then 5% people interact, you share prayer requests, we're going to encourage you to maybe expand that to 15 to 20 minutes, where you're inviting people into conversation about how they're actually doing. And then how are they struggling with the content and the biblical material that you've shared with them, as a group. Others of you have had the advantage of starting a group in the last couple of years where your group has been intentionally designed, where at least half, if not more of the time, is intended to facilitate and invite conversations like this. So find a way to encourage everyone to participate. Second thing is learn to steer the discussion without controlling it. Steer the discussion without controlling it. So let's say if I'm in a group with Daryl and, Daryl starts talking for more than 5 minutes and I see Billy Bob over next to Daryl who hasn't had an opportunity to talk, at some point I'm going to kind of step in with Daryl and say, Daryl, I appreciate your contribution. That's great. Let's hear from several others. Billy Bob, what are you thinking right now? So we all know extroverts within groups, they got no problem being asked to talk. But it's the people that stay hidden behind all their introvert curtains we want to help bring into the discussion so they can feel known, so they can feel loved, so that they can be celebrated as well. Now, when I talk about steering the discussion instead of controlling it, my rule of thumb is if you have a content-driven group, which many of you do, then, I'm encouraging you to find maybe 30 to 40% of your group time where it can be more in smaller groups where people are able to discuss and talk about what's going on in their lives, to actually pray for one another by name like that and discuss whatever the content was. Those of you that have started recent life groups that have been like offsite groups, I would encourage you to spend about 70% of your time in group time and maybe 30% on the content side. And by the way, as I talk about that, as a leader in facilitating groups, Jimmy's been with me in groups. Daryl has, a couple of others of you on this call. I try not to talk more than 25 to 30% of the time as a group leader or facilitator. Rest of the time, I want to be asking questions of other people and engaging them in the dialogue, and where they feel like their voice is as important as mine, okay? A third practice of a great facilitator is to be curious. Learn to ask clarifying questions about, what's going on in people's lives. And so if let me just turn to Daryl. If I were to ask Daryl, hey, Daryl, how's your day going? Well, Daryl's, cultural answer could be, it's been a great day. No big deal. Now, I can either go, that's great, Daryl, or else I could get curious and I say, well, what does a great day look like for you? And so where I want to be curious and I want to learn to ask clarifying questions as a group leader, as a facilitator, to help draw people out. And this is just really, really, really important. So, what we want to do is to be able to help people develop a safe, predictable environment that really encourages, all the group members to, to be able to join into the conversation and the dialogue so they can move from being hearers to doers. So let me just pause for a moment, and I want to invite Jimmy into this discussion. And Jimmy, I know that in the last couple of years, you've made some sort of shift or transition in your group where, first of all, you have world-class teaching going on in your group, both with you and Linda in her own right. Linda didn't notice me a couple of weeks ago, but I was standing by the door watching her and listening to her in action, and I was very impressed. It was really, really good stuff, Linda. So anyway, Jimmy, as of late, you've been spending more time breaking your larger group down into small groups and having them where you've been inviting more conversation than ever before. Talk to us about, what that transition has looked like and what you feel like it's gaining the people in your group.
Well, David, I think I'm trying to teach less, which is hard for me. I love content and I love information. I'm trying to teach less. But as most folks know who are listening, who know me, I tend to teach a series every teaching. It just tends to get a life to it. It goes on and on. But I realize the people out there just simply can't absorb all that information at once. So I'm making a concerted effort to shorten the teaching time. And I've always done questions for application and after the teaching, but I'm really trying to increase that time that they'll have, David, not just for the questions, though I think the application is important. I think the increased time needs to be really given more than anything else, and that is, how's life going? If I just give them, 20, 30 minutes and they just go through 3 or 4 questions, and even if everybody participates, they don't have any, they're not sharing life together. They're sharing good information together. But I just see the increasing importance, of that. And I know my leaders are hearing that more and more from me, that, hey, I'm not going to give up teaching. I'm not asking anybody else to give up teaching. Just realize we probably could teach a little bit less and offer a little bit more conversation at the table.
Yeah, that's terrific, Jimmy. It's a great example of what we're talking about together this evening. How did you end up breaking your group down into smaller groups, and do you have leaders or facilitators, and how do you do that?
Well, from the beginning, about 3 years ago when I started, I always started out with a concept that there would be large group teaching that I would provide, and then they would be gathered around tables in the room. Okay. And we've done that from the beginning. And I let get away from me and I made a critical leadership mistake, that as some of the tables who had stronger leaders grew, I let them add a second table. So what was happening is, we had 12 chairs around a table, and sometimes we had 14 to 18 people.
Yeah. And
you put 2 round tables together, you got a good 12, 15 feet. And I just watched, it took me a long time to get there. I just watched a lack of participation. I watched increasing for a lot of people difficulty to hear. And so I made a hard decision, because a third of the groups in my room were in double tables.
Yep.
And I went to them last December and I said, we need to have probably a very painful discussion. But what we need to do is to create new groups out of these double tables with good facilitators, so there can be more participation by everyone involved, so there can be easier hearing, so they can facilitate more caring. You can't care for 20 and 25 people. It's just too much.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, David, we took those 9 tables, created 9 new groups, and here we are 2.5 months later, and 6 of those 9 groups, which are now on a single table of 10 chairs, 6 of those 9 groups, I challenged yesterday to begin to prepare to create another group out of the existing group that just started just a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Awesome. Do any of you have questions for Jimmy regarding that? Okay, I know some of you also do that as well. I was just picking on Jimmy because he's a good friend, and I really admire the work he's doing in his class. I was very familiar with that, and I think he's a great example of taking what's kind of been a traditional life group model here and morphing it into, something that has a chance of experiencing even greater authentic community. And Jimmy, I applaud you for that, and it's just great.
David, so, can I ask Jimmy a question?
Yes, absolutely, Bob.
Jimmy, how did you select your facilitators, and did you train them?
When I started, Bob, initially, I made the decision that I would handpick about what I figured was going to be half of the groups in the room, and I did. I handpicked folks that I knew that could facilitate the discussion, and frankly, I also knew it kind of dropped out of participation in small groups. And I reached out to them and said, come and help me. But again, half of the groups in the room, when we began meeting, did not have an identified group leader. But what I've discovered over time is leaders tend to self-identify if you give them time. And I just let that process take place. And it's happened over and over again. I go to the leaders now and say, hey, listen, y'all decide who needs to be the facilitator at the new group. Y'all decide who needs to do that. Y'all decide who willingly and voluntarily wants to go help launch that new group. And then along the way, I provide training. There are videos available that I make accessible to my leaders, and I meet with them about once a quarter. We met yesterday for 30 minutes to talk about, again, who we are and what we're doing and why we're trying to do it. So that's so foreign to what I would have done, Bob, 20 years ago. I would have had so much control over who was leading, and make sure that I had spent a lot of time with them. And it's just not that critical, especially when they're doing less teaching and more facilitating. You can really entrust them. You need to get, obviously, people with good people skills and people that, that invite people to, be a part of the conversation. Not everybody can do that well, but it's worked for me. The main thing was starting groups and keeping them small enough that they could really provide care and engage in meaningful conversation and hear one another. But the group be small enough. That's where I messed up frankly for a couple of years. I let the groups get too large.
Yeah. I think we've all done that before, Jimmy. So thanks for your honesty in that. So anytime any of you find your group growing beyond 12 or 14 people, we would encourage you to, at least during the course of each group meeting, to break them down into, 2 or more groupings of where there's just 8 to 10 people, so that everyone, again, has an opportunity to get fully engaged in the conversation. Here's what we know. Every voice that is in your group is so important to God. He wants everyone's voice to be heard and to be felt, for people to be able to have compassion for one another's voices that represents what's currently going on in the story of their life. And so, the larger these groups become, to Jimmy's point a moment ago, the more other people are going to get locked out of the conversation. And so we want to make it easier than ever before. Again, some of you have just started with a group of 8 or 10 people, and you're planning on keeping it that way for a while. But I'm saying if it does grow in time, like Ron and Kim started, you guys started like with 8, 10 people, didn't you? Yeah. And so that, they already have the ideal size group, but if in time, some of the members of their group kind of add some other people into it, then, they may have to do the same kind of thing. So that's what we're encouraging all of us just to be aware of and to be more intentional about. All right, before we wrap it up, let me share one other thing that we really believe helps a person become a really great facilitator and a great group leader here at First Orlando. We think the best group leaders have these kinds of characteristics going on in their life. First of all, they're humble. What in the world does humility mean? Humility means that I know and I demonstrate I don't know it all. That's what humility is. I'm humble when I can listen to other people instead of always having to share my thoughts or what I think is the truth that I get like no one else does, and I just become insistent that everyone has to hear my opinion on it. Humility is where I go, I've got things to learn myself and I don't know it all, okay? And that brings us into the second thing. A great group leader is teachable. They can not only hear someone else, but they actually believe they can learn from other people in their group. Even when you're a group leader, a group facilitator. I lead groups every single week, different kinds of groups, both here and in other places. And oh my gosh, as much as people tell me they gain stuff from the groups I lead, I feel like I gain as much, if not even more, from them. So people can tell, though, if that's real and genuine coming from you as a leader. Are you teachable? Doesn't mean that you're open. It actually means that you feel like you can learn from other people. A small group of us earlier this morning were studying a passage of scripture around, Jesus dealing with the little children. And we were just acknowledging the fact that, children, are constant learners. They have what's called a beginner's mind. They're just incessantly, wanting to know more and learning. And how Jesus said he wants us as adults keeping that same kind of teachable spirit. A third thing is the best group leaders are curious. They're curious. They want to know more. They want to know why. They want to know how. They keep asking follow-up questions. I try to be curious all the time with my wife, Caron. I'll ask her about, some painting she's been working on earlier in the day, and I'll go, sweetheart, why was your attention drawn to this particular image? And what made you, I'm just trying to be curious. Or, she's often coaching other leaders and spouses of leaders. And, what I'll do, I'll ask her about what is it that you sense God was doing in you while you were coaching this other person? Well, why do you think God was drawing your attention to that? So it's just you and I being curious, but doing it in a group leader context. So, Brian, I need you to hit your mute button if you can. Your mic mute button, if you can find it. Brian, if you can hear me, hit your mute button. Okay, I'm going to keep going. The last thing is to be intentional. To be intentional as a leader. You're being intentional in how you plan your meetings, how you facilitate those meetings. All right, I think, there we go. No problems, no worries there. So we not only want each one of our group leaders to be curious, but we want them to be intentional. Where you and I are being intentional in how we're preparing our group, how we're leading our group, the things we're inviting people into, being intentional about making sure each person is able to contribute something to the group. It doesn't have to all be equal. Being intentional about afterwards, seeing if there's a way a group can meet some obvious need that may have emerged, in the group. So those are 4 things that I would like to encourage you to regularly bring yourself back to and go, is my group sensibility for me, a teachableness, and being intentional, is really important. So the big idea today has been to learn what it means to facilitate engaging group meetings. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. Also, in your notes that I sent you, there's actually a series of 4 other videos. You can just click on the link. They're only 60 seconds long, and it will help you further understand the conversation that we've been having together today. Okay? All right. So before we go, a couple of you, that was exciting right there, wasn't it? See, with live events, you never know what's going to happen. This is what Jesus has to deal with the rest of us that are in charge. So lots of noise sometimes. So before we go, I'd like to hear from 3 or 4 of you. What's one primary thing that you've heard tonight in our session together that you feel like God's trying to specifically draw your attention to as a leader? What's one thing that's specific you feel like God's trying to draw your attention to as a result of our time together this evening?
More interaction.
Okay.
We have a very large group. Probably don't have enough interaction.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great, Bob. Does that feel scary or does it feel doable?
Oh, it's doable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doable.
Great.
There's some logistically, it's a bit of a problem, but it's doable.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, Bob.
This is George. So
Yes, George.
You've confirmed we've done too much teaching. We've been together 2 years. we've got an ex-pastor in our group who loves to teach. So just this last week, nothing personal, guys, sorry, but we've decided we're going to stop halfway through and spend the time in conversation and prayer. And so this reinforces that. Thank you.
Way to go, George. Oh, that's awesome to hear. Good,
Yep.
good, good. Good win there.
Yep.
We found that we're growing so rapidly that it seems that we get a whole different set each time we meet. But when we find we do get all together, we're going to have to break into 2 groups. And we've already identified leaders and facilitators. And we can't wait to just bring this on them and say, here you go. But we will have a conversation before that. But we are at the point now where we don't want to multiply just yet because of the scheduling. But we do think when we do get, and I agree, anything bigger than 12, because we do call on people individually when we ask questions, which is kind of new. And for our introverts, it makes them scared. But I think it's good. And because they're actually, we've got some great responses that, if God can speak through a donkey, he can speak through any one of us. So
Yes. I'm a testament to that. So, yes. Hey, that's a great report, Kim. Thank you. A couple others of you. One thing you sense God was saying to you tonight. Okay. Well, it's great being with you guys. I'll have Cindy send out the video link from this. And this is probably for those of you, back to what Kim was just referencing, this would probably, these kinds of videos, they're going to be really short in length. And notice we've just been going for 42 minutes here. And half of this has been a conversation. In fact, even more of that than that has been that. And it'd be super easy to train some of your newbies, your discussion leaders, with videotapes like this, and then sit down after they watch it, then sit down, discuss it with them. What stood out to them? How could they practice that? What are the things that they find most difficult or challenging when it comes to facilitating engaging groups, and what comes natural to them in all of that? So those are some examples of what to do as well. So it's great being with you guys, and we'll get back with you. Our next online training session will be like the first part of June, but you'll see and hear more from me even before then. So let me pray for all of us, all right? Lord, I thank you for all these outstanding men and women who are representing your kingdom every single week with the people that you've entrusted to their care. Lord, every one of us are honored to be able to be shepherds and pastors representing you. We want to represent your heart. We want to represent your mind. We want to represent your hands to your people. Lord, we thank you for the way that you use us, even as in our ineptness, even in our brokenness, even in our own incompleteness. Lord, I ask that you would cause the people in our group to gel together into extended spiritual families like never before. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, thanks, guys. So great being with you. I absolutely love this time with you like this. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yep, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.